there's going to be people fighting them, and one of them who has fought them successfully and won relocation for herself and her community is Lois Gibbs, founder of CH&J, and I want to turn it over to her.
Thank you, Gustavo. So yeah, I want to talk about relocation and what does that look like, and what is it that you need to think about, and where has it been done and how has it been done. It is very difficult to win, but it is not impossible. We have helped several dozen communities achieve this and win it, but it's not easy. It's not easy, and it's not easy mentally as well as physically. Most of these communities are families, they're almost indigenous communities. They're families who have lived together through generations. It's generational churches where people have joined together in churches and have assisted one another. So on one hand, if you can win relocation, that's one thing, but on the other hand, it is the social structure of your community that also is going to get torn apart in ways that are difficult. So I have some slides. See if we don't get bombed again, we can show those slides. There we go. So in this short presentation, I just want to sort of like talk about what has been done, what has been won, how did they win it, and really help you think that through. We have a publication which is on our website, which is also here. Maybe Gustavo, you could put that in the chat. I didn't do it, I forgot. It's called Getting Organized, Relocation, Getting Organized, and Getting Out, or as us girls call it, Go-Go. And so it has lots of information. It's a fairly healthy publication that that really talks about what happened to these other, I mean, literally giving case studies of what happened in other communities and how did they achieve it. Those who were on the call last time might remember Mr. Powell. Mr. Powell is from Birmingham, Alabama, and he was sharing his story with us last time we were together. His group is called Panic, and he's been working on relocation since about 2014 in Birmingham. He is a Superfund emergency site, so he's not a Superfund site, and he's not a RCRA site, so he's sort of in this weird place. That's his home. It's a lovely home, but it's worthless. No one's buying his house, as lovely as it may be. So in relocation, the ones that we have worked with, so who can pay the cost of relocation? Is it the government? Is it somebody else? And as you can see from each one of these examples, anybody can be the entity that relocates you. So you need to think about strategically, you know, where is your best opportunity? Where do you have the most power? Where can you move it? So in Love Canal, it was the state and the federal government who moved it. Now, we always wanted Occidental Petroleum to pay for it. We did not want the taxpayers to pay for it. This is my backyard. But we knew to get Occidental Petroleum, sort of like Union Pacific, to do it, it was going to be 7 to 10 years, and we had lots of children we wanted to get out of there. So we pushed the state and the federal government to relocate us and then sue Occidental Petroleum for recovery of costs. And they did do that, and Occidental Petroleum actually paid $197 million for Love Canal. In Savannah, Georgia, this was a solid waste dump site, a garbage dump, a city county-owned dump, and the county government, in that case, moved people out. In Centralia, Pennsylvania, this was a special appropriations that went through Congress, so they went after their congressional representatives. They got a $40 million special appropriations through Congress. This also happened in Pitcher, Oklahoma. Then they could move the people out with those monies. In Louisiana, whoops. sorry, and that was me, not some bomber. In Louisiana, it was the company who moved them out. So Shell Chemical, as a result of people really going after Shell and their expansion of their facility and going closer and closer and closer to people's property, Shell decided to buy them out and call it a buffer zone. So that's the other thing. Nobody ever admits there's a problem. Just so you understand. We were moved first because of close proximity to remedial construction. That means we were close to where the bulldozers were. In our second relocation, we had two phases. The second relocation was because of mental anguish, because we were also upset and they wanted to make our mental health look better. You know, so no one ever, in any one of these sites, not a single one of these sites, is there the fact that people were moved because they were sick or because a chemical was going to hurt them necessarily. At the Pensacola one, the US EPA did this under their Superfund program. And the next likely one we're going to see on the news is going to be the EPA moving some folks just outside of Albany, New York, from a mining site. And they have announced that this is what they're proposing to do. So you can see from here that there's anybody from Union Pacific to the local, to the state, to the federal government who potentially could put up the money to purchase homes and move folks out if they so choose. So how much do you get for your home? Well, we all know that your homes are not worth what they really should be worth. I mean, by no fault of your own. You know, in community after community, the home's values drop because of the pollution, because of the noise, because of the nuisance, because people are unable to get home improvement loans because their property has devalued to fix the hole in the roof, which then causes, so it generally degrades, the whole neighborhood degrades, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the people who live there. They're just stuck and they can't do anything about it. So how much do you get? So in the Wagner Point example, I think is a really good one. This is in Baltimore, Maryland. So if you had a real estate person go into Wagner Point, it was Wagner Point in Fairfield. It was really two communities. One was a white community. The other was an African-American community. So these two communities, so if you had somebody come in, an appraiser, and look at the homes, they would say the homes were worth $25,000 to $50,000. Well, for $25,000, $50,000, you could not buy another house somewhere. You just could not do that. And so what the community realizes that we need more money than that. We need replacement value. And they came up with this number, and I don't actually recall how they came up with this number, but they came up with this number of every property owner needs $115,000 because that's what it's going to cost for them to move somewhere else in the Maryland, greater Maryland area. And so the negotiations began with the city. The city finally said, and the polluters, okay, we'll buy you out. And they were going to give them 25 to 50. And the people walked out. Now, it's really hard when you think about this. When people are really sick and they're dying of cancer, and somebody says, I'll give you $50,000 tomorrow to buy your property. You can go live with your son or your daughter or whatever. To stand there and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm standing with my group. I'm standing with all of the people. We're all standing together. I'm going to turn that down. As much as personally that was really difficult for a number of people, they stood together. So the result was that they actually won. They got the polluter to put up some money. They got the state to put up some money. They got different bags of money that the city pulled together. So every property owner got $115,000 regardless of their home. And they also got salvage rights. So that also meant they could take the chandelier that they had in their family for generations or whatever. So that was worth probably another $20,000 in actual material value. So that was one of the things that I thought was incredibly impressive, that if you really want to win something, the community has to not only organize, but you need to stand together and support one another as you move forward. In Centralia, Pennsylvania, and Savannah, Georgia, it was a little different. These were properties that actually you could no longer live on. The Savannah, Georgia, those homes were built on top of a dump and they were sinking. These homes were going to just sink into the dump or catch on fire. And in Centralia, it was over one of these underground long mines, they call them, where the mine was collapsing. So in both of these cases, although this has also been offered to other places, what they did is they found a tract of land and they built another identical community, meaning that if you had a 3-bedroom, wood house, you got a 3-bedroom wood house. If you had a 3-bedroom brick house, you got a 3-bedroom brick house. If you had your little church around the corner, your faith organization, then you got a little church around the corner. So they actually built what they called New Centralia. And they, in fact, they even moved the cemetery of the loved ones of the families. So in Georgia, they did the same sort of thing. In Georgia, they just moved the homes, though. They did not move the businesses or the faith organizations or anything like that. So it's another option. Actually, Pensacola, almost Florida, almost went for this option, and then there was a division in the organization, and they ended up getting money as opposed to getting a tract of land with brand new homes on top of it. This is one of the things that Charlie Powell, Mr. Powell from Birmingham, is looking at very seriously for his community. So anything is possible, is what I'm telling you. If you are organized, anything is possible. So there are some key things that you really need to think about in your case, because your land is not your land is not going to go down into an old mine shaft or into a dump site. But everyone has to decide what they want to do, and they have to be able to do that judgment-free. A lot of people say, it's really bad here, people are getting sick, are you crazy, you can't stay behind. That's not fair, that's not right, that should never be said. That if people choose to stay, they choose to stay. And if they choose to leave, they choose to leave. And it's their decision to make. We do not enter other people's personal lives and make those decisions. That's really important. And the people who choose to stay have a vote and a voice on future land use and cleanup of the facility. So there's something there for them. 10% of almost every community I've worked with the exception of Centralia and Savannah, is that people, 10% of the community stays. They choose to stay because they're seniors, because they have roots there, whatever the reason. So you need to leave some room for those folks. Property owners have a set of needs, as we were talking about in Baltimore, where they need replacement, they have structures, and they wanted $115,000. Well, at the same time, rental families also has specific needs. They have a deposit on a new apartment, they have utility hookups, they have a number of costs that are involved, in addition to moving costs, we might add. So one of the things that we find in these communities, and this is true of Mr. Powell's community, although it's now come together, but it was really a struggle at the beginning, is that our opponents, whoever the opponents are, whether it's Union Pacific or your county or your city or someone else, will work to divide and pit families against each other. That the homeowners or the property owners don't care about the renters, or the renters don't care about the faith organization, or, you know, and there's 15 different ways you could divide a community, as opposed to having the conversation about what is important to all of us. What is it you need as a renter? What is it you need as a property owner? What is it that you need as a small hairdresser or business? What is it that you need? And really make a list of those things and agree that everybody is entitled to something that they need to make them whole, whether they stay, whether they leave, whatever they do. That is the way to win the maximum amount. That's how Baltimore got $115,000 per person, per family. Okay. So one way you could do that, which is also a really good organizing tool, is to survey the community. To really go out into the community and ask people directly, what do you want, right? Whoops, did I go too far? No. Oh, I'm sorry. Is to ask people, what is it that you want, right? Okay, so I'm sorry. Does everybody want relocation? Do some people want to stay? Who wants to stay? Where do we draw the line? So Mr. Downey, you're talking about where the plume is going, and where do you draw the line, and then where does other industries come in to be blamed for this, as opposed to, you need to have those conversations amongst yourselves in your larger community and decide you're going to draw the line there, and they're going to say whatever they're going to say, but this is what we have decided, and stand together with that. What do the churches and the businesses want? Because they are supported by all of you. You know, churches and businesses are not all by themselves. If they don't have parishioners and they don't have clients, then what are they doing, right? So really going out and talking to each sector of the community and say, what do you want? If you want to stay behind, what is it you want? If you want to move, what is it you need? And really think about that in a very cohesive way. The drawing the line is the most difficult, I think. And here's the reason, is because there's always something on the other side of the line. I mean, you could take in that Houston paper where you had I-10 and the loop and stuff and say everything within the highway, but maybe not, or maybe so. Where do you draw the line? How far do you go with relocation? How far do you go in phase 1 or phase 2? Most often, relocation and those type of benefits happen in a phased option. So as I was saying earlier, phase 1 was our first 239 homes closest to the waste pit. And then in phase 2, it was the outer community. It's not unusual for that to happen, but where do you draw the line? Where do you stop? And this doesn't have to be on purpose. You can say, we're going to draw the line at this street until we have further testing that shows that it isn't contaminated beyond that, right? So you have a reason to say this street, because that's what we have testing for, but we want more testing as you go out. And if we find more danger, then we want to include that street in that relocation plan. So it's a way to justify you moving from one street to another, with the exception of like when there's natural boundaries, which you really don't have natural boundaries other than the major highways, the loop and Interstate 10. Okay, see if I can do this. Okay, so the last slide is really about building power. So you can win relocation and you can win benefits for people who do not want to leave. You can win all of that if and only if you organize in a way that is really strategic, that you really spend time not just talking about health and health risks and contamination, but talking about people's self-interest. What do you want? How long have you lived here? What do you know? And really put that together like in a big giant sheets of paper. This is what everything people want who want to stay, everything people who want to leave, everything faith organization want, and put it all together and say, this is our demand. Are you going to win all of it? Probably not, but you'll win the majority of it. I have seen it happen dozens of times, but only if you're organized. So I mentioned Mr. Powell earlier because Mr. Powell's community group was really split on relocation versus not relocation. And Mr. Powell, in his panic group, kept saying, well, if they don't want to get relocated, to hell with them. I'm going to move on and do what I got to do because this is really important and my wife is dying, and he had a sincere interest in it. And it took almost a year and a half for those two sides of the community to come together and say, you know what, it's okay if you want to stay behind. It's not something I want to do, but it's okay if you want to do it. And how can I help you get what you need to stay behind? So it was really important for him to have that conversation and to really come together. But if you do the survey at the get-go, you really do get a sense for the community, and then people see a self-interest in what's happening, and they'll come to your meetings because they want to protect their self-interest, whatever that might be, and they will help to build that power to put pressure on the entity that can give you what you want, whomever that might be. So that's a very short thing. But I'm happy to help you think about the survey. We've had a number of them that you could use going door to door. You can't really go door to door in COVID time, but there might be another way you could do it by dropping it off at the door and then coming back and picking it up at another time, or Zooming a conversation, then dropping it off at doors and coming. There's probably a number of ways to do it so that we are social distancing and that we are protecting our brothers and sisters in struggle here. So I'll stop there, Gustavo.
Thank you, Lois. That was great. One of the things